Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to All Burgundy and Gold, everything powered by the Urban Sports Scene and Fox Sports Radio 1340 AM and 96.9 FM. Our special reaction to the 53-man roster. Ray and the homie Wole is out. Me and Mo are here tonight with Fox Sports analyst and Redskin beat reporter Felix Trammell. What's up, Felix? What's up, fellas?
What's going on, man? What's good?
Not much. All is well, man. All
Good to have you, Felix, man. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, we just happy, man. The roster's finally out, and we get to talk about Commanders football, right? We get to talk about the Commanders football in the roster. We know that there will probably be some practice squad people added a little bit later, but we just want to talk about tonight the 53-man roster out. So, guys who are watching us live or on YouTube, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below. Hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification, and just join in with the conversation. We want to hear from you tonight. Want to hear your comments, concerns. A special show where we're talking about Commanders football and the 53-man roster. Let's get started here, man. Go ahead, Mo.
Man, you guys make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Just search All Burgundy and Gold Errrything. All right. Also tweet us at ABG_Errrything and hit us up on IG at ABG_Errrything. And like our All Burgundy and Gold Errrything Facebook page. Make sure you guys subscribe to our Burgundy and Gold Everything YouTube channel as well. So we're going to kick off the show. Felix, been looking at the list of folks who made this team, and I wanted to know who you were surprised by and why.
The biggest surprise would be Curtis Hodges. And when you see Curtis Hodges, you're like, oh my God, like he's 6'6", 6'7". He looks like a football player. But then you see him play, it would just be, as the camp went on, it got worse and worse. And then the preseason, it just didn't look good. So I was kind of shocked by that. And I was expecting Alex Armah to make the squad just because he serves a dual role. He can be that third or fourth tight end, and he can be a lead blocker, H-back, fullback type. And that does have a role in Eric Bieniemy's offense. So Curtis Hodges would be my shock, but Coach Rivera talked about him today and talked about him. This is really essentially his rookie year because he was hurt most of last season. So they're trying to recruit the potential. They're keeping that place as a potential for the future. So that would be my one shock. Everybody else, it makes sense. I didn't have Casey Tuhill and James Smith-Williams making the roster both because I kind of feel like they're the same guy. Like they both do the same thing. I don't want to say they're Jags, but they're standard players. Like neither one of them is a game changer. And I think you could have used that position somewhere else, maybe another defensive back, but that I understand why they kept them both, but that would probably be it. Curtis Hodges would be my one, like, okay, I don't see why he's on this roster.
Glenn, any player surprised you that were cut and why?
No players there was no surprises. I really didn't have any surprises. They were cut. I mean, you had a surprise. None at all, man. I expected this, Kazman Allen, but we all knew that might have been up in the air, that he may be cut, may not be cut. What else could he do in the offense besides return kicks? I thought about that. Not really too much of a surprise. I'm glad the team kept who they kept. I think is until we get to Dax Milne, but that's a whole different story. but we know why he was caught because he can catch footballs. But no really surprises about who they kept. I think this team is well built for the long haul. And the practice, I'm interested to see who they put back on the practice squad. I think that's the most important thing for this team is to see who they put on the practice squad.
So Felix, I think a name that caught my attention was Milo Eifler, or is it Eifler?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think he was on the short end of the stick when it came to this? I seen some game reps from him, and during the preseason, and heard some buzz about him in camp. I want to know why you think he was on the other side of the cut list.
He wasn't bad. I saw him as a fringe guy. And like we were saying, the linebacker position is just getting devalued. So they weren't going to keep a lot of linebackers anyway. They play a lot of two linebacker, really one linebacker, majority of the defense. So it was a position that you needed somewhere else. Milo's a good player. Had a couple up and down moments, but he's a solid linebacker. So I do expect him to practice squad him because step up at any time. But it speaks more to Kaleki Hudson. Kaleki Hudson had a great camp. Like it finally clicked, and that's been Wole guy forever. That's that Michigan stuff. But Kaleki was finally playing fast and free, and he was even calling the defense. So every linebacker there except for Jamin has called the defense. Cody Barton calls the defense. David Mayo can call the defense, and now Kaleki Hudson can call the defense. So I think that became a second hitch for Milo. He never called the defense. So that just shows that he was a little bit behind, but he does have some potential. He's a fashion linebacker. He can really go sideline to sideline, which is very good in this league. So I do expect him to practice squad Milo and keep him around because he's really liked by the coaching staff.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of practice squad, we saw that Jake Fromm was cut. What do you think he lands on his practice squad, or do you think he has to find a home elsewhere?
I do, because in all sincerity, if you would have asked me this question in July, he was way behind Brissett. If you ask me this question based off of the month of August in the preseason games, Fromm has caught Brissett. And I remember seeing Fromm all through his years at Georgia, and I'm like, this guy's not really good. But there's caveats to that. Georgia ran a 1980s offense the entire time he was there. They ran a very basic two-back, didn't throw till third and long. Everyone knows you're throwing, yada, yada. Fromm showed me some playmaking ability. And now his arm is not as good as Brissett's, but he showed a certain command of the offense that actually he has some mobility. That's way more mobility than I thought. So I do think he'll land on the practice squad if no one else claims him. I've seen some funky quarterback moves today. I think New England only has one on their active roster right now. So, I mean, there's a possibility like he's picked up there or somewhere else. But if he does clear waivers, I do expect him to sign him back because he does do well in the offense, and he's progressed a lot more than Brissett did in this month of August, this training camp.
Fantastic. Glenn, you alluded to Dax Milne earlier. You want to go ahead and shoot your question?
Yeah, man. Do you see the value? I want to go back to the Jake Fromm thing before we go back to Dax Milne. I don't think he caught Brissett. I just think that I would love to see Dax. I would love to see Jake Fromm with the twos, play against twos, and not have what you would call, I want to call it garbage time, or playing against guys who are trying to make the team. I would like to see him had some against some great opportunity. I think he has. He did make some progression, and he did. Let's be honest. Some of those games, the Ravens game, even the Bengals, he led the team down the field. Got scores when they needed to get scores. And you saw some of the competitiveness in him. But I'm not where he's at with Brissett per se. But I do think he does make the practice squad if someone else doesn't claim him. He's a great backup to have, another quarterback to have in that room just in case Sam Howell gets hurt or Jacoby Brissett goes down. But I think we talked about it last week on the podcast that Sam Howell and Brissett can both run this team, and probably won't miss a beat if something happened to Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett became QB1. So yeah, I don't think that's the issue. Here's a question about Dax Milne. Do you see value with the team keeping Dax Milne? Why is his team so loyal to him?
That's a question I ask every day, and I put it like this. There's times when you're aggressive, and there's times where you don't beat yourself. Dax Milne is a don't beat yourself guy. So if I put Dax Milne in the fourth quarter to field a punt, he's going to catch it. Now, a guy like Kaz Allen, he may make the return. He might score a touchdown, but he also might muff that ball. And I think that's what they weighed, because in the end of the day, this is still a defensive-based team. So you turn them all, we're not going to beat ourselves. So they know if Milne goes out there, he's going to field the ball. And he's going to he averaged 8 yards a return last year. The top of the league was 13. So when you think about that in the grand scheme of things, he wasn't far off the league average. I mean, there was only 3 or 4 punt returns all season. So, I mean, for touchdowns. So you're 8 yards of return. You're not turning the ball over. That's what his value is. And he's a better receiver than Kaz Allen. And there's no debate in that. He runs better routes. He catches the ball. Kaz Allen had every opportunity to make this roster, and he couldn't catch the ball. And you saw that in the Ravens game. You saw that in the Bengals game. There were balls that were right on him that he could not call in. And you can't do that. You just can't do that. And then you have the muff on top of it on Saturday. That sealed his fate. Now they're going to bring him back because he does. 4-3 ability is 4-3 ability. But in the fourth quarter, if you're playing the Eagles and it's a one-score game, you've got to be able to know that this guy's going to field the ball. And if I know I'm going to get the ball on the 25 versus he muffs it and I might get it at the 4 or the other team gets the ball back, I'm going to take my chances on the safer bet. Now, I get it, but you got to look at it that way. Because if you're having a lot of one-score games, you can't have those mistakes. So that's how they're looking at it. I didn't say I agreed with it, but that's how they're approaching it.
You know, you got my man George said, please put Brian Pringle on returns and not Dax Milne. You know, Brian Pringle back there can kick. We've seen a couple last year in the past where Antonio Gibson had gone back there. We even saw where Jahan Dotson had gone back there in a key situation to return a punt or a kick at that time. So you have players that could do it if you, as you alluded to, as you mentioned, that in that fourth quarter crunch, you need somebody to make the security catch or get you more than 8 yards. I think that's the problem with the fans with Dax, is that he only gets 8 yards, right? He only gets 8 yards. Where you had a organization used to have some good returners, right? That back in the day, your Brian Mitchells and guys of that nature who could return kicks and put you in good situations and give your offense an opportunity to get down the field. We know that this offense that we're hoping that the Washington Commanders will be able to have, if they ever get a short field, they'll probably be able to put up a lot of points. And that's what you're looking for from your returners.
And I think that's what, and I think to answer your question, that's why the team is so loyal to him, like Felix alluded to. He has wide receiver ability. You know that he's going to field the punt, and all you really want to do is get this offense back on the field so they can go according to the way that they feel about Sam Howell and the weapons that he has around. We know we feel a little bit more reassured when Terry's out there, but you want to put this potential high-powered offense on the field. Just give us on the field so we can go do the job, because that's what we get paid to do. So we don't want anybody chancing that and screwing that up. So I completely agree with the Dax Milne, keeping him on the roster. It reminds me of the love affair with Troy Apke and what he used to do on special teams also. There's ability there. There's potential there. You know he's always going to be there to do what it is he's supposed to do. He may not do anything extra. But at least he won't kill us. You know what I mean? At least we won't hurt ourselves.
And he's going to actually see time in the offense too. And I think that's going to be underrated. And they kept 7 receivers. They're going to cycle a lot of receivers through. If you look at Kansas City and see their thing, they cycle a lot of receivers through. So it's not going to be where you have your top 3 and then you have your 4th subbing in for 1, and then maybe your 5th gets 3 snaps. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see all those players used in this offense. So you got to go out there with a guy who runs better routes. So that's Dax in that situation. I know the fan base doesn't agree, but that he's a better receiver, hands down, than a lot of those guys who were cut. There's a reason why he's there.
Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at these 7 receivers. You look at the receiving core that the Washington kept. They kept Jahan Dotson, Dami Brown, which we know, Curtis Samuel, Dax Milne, Brian Pringle, Terry McLaurin, and he got my man Mitchell Tinsley, who won himself a spot right in the 3rd preseason game. Mitchell Tinsley won this spot. He won the spot, I believe, in the last preseason game. They show how versatile he is, and they didn't want to put him out on waivers because I think somebody would have picked him up. So he had to make this team, which knocked some other guys, which knocked the Kazman Allen off this team, because Mitchell Tinsley was actually stepped up and improved his roster spot. So those 7 receivers, can all those guys, as you mentioned, Felix, really step in with this offense and contribute?
You made a good point. He did play his way on this team. I think there was a true 2 open spots between Milne and Tinsley, who won them. They brought in Kemp because Kemp was a bigger guy who knew the offense. He didn't flash anything. Cass had his concerns. Tremaine wasn't quite ready yet. You can go down the list, but Tinsley really played his way on, and he can play both outside receiver positions. And he has decent speed. So they couldn't risk, like you said, they couldn't risk coming off of his turf toe. If he's not quite 100% week one, you don't play him, and you're deep enough at receiver to get through that game without Terry, and that gives him another week. So Mitchell Tinsley can do those Terry McLaurin sort of roles, being that bigger body, he's very similar to Terry McLaurin in that aspect, in the way they run routes, the way they do things. So that's why he made the roster. It's a legit pick, and he would be the one you would say didn't quite know if he'd make it, but he definitely played his way on. And you saw it Saturday night, the fruits of all that labor. He got chance after chance, and he produced and he performed.
You know, Joe, we got a question from George, and before we move on, George asked a question, which I thought it too. He said, the defense kept a whole bunch of linemen. Not sure if they get even with Mathis and Young injuries. Like what Felix, I want to know what you think about, the injury. Why did they keep a lot of linemen? Why was the purpose of keeping 11 linemen?
Yeah, it's 11. And I think the norm in the league now is to add more D linemen and less linebackers. And I think you're going to see that more across the board. Philadelphia was keeping 10 last year. And that's how you keep a strong rush. Like the days of, your lineman playing 80%, defensive lineman playing 80% of the snaps is gone. So if you can give them 60% and give them full out energy, and then have guys that can come in behind them, I think that's how you have a defensive line that takes over games. So, we all knew the starting four. They were locked in. Efe Obada has stepped up another level, and there's a lot of stuff that people haven't seen. He played a lot of inside at camp when they were doing a 2-minute defense, going against a 2 minutes offense, and Obada was on the inside rushing. So you had Obada next to Young. So now you have Obada, Young, Allen, Sweat. That you have options, and then when they go to the 5-1-5, and you have Mathis in the middle again with the starting line, or Ridgeway can come in and play that same role. Now you can go 5-1-5. Now your defense has horses that then you can sub all those guys in. So you're probably addressing 10 on game day, 9 to 10 somewhere in there. So you have replacements to do that. So that's the trend. My thinking was I would have like Casey Tuhill and James Smith-Williams are still the same exact player to me. And so with KJ stepping up, with being drafted, with Andre Henry, like that's a lot of ends. But, those guys can kind of show them the rope. And if you need to sit out a guy here and there, Casey Tuhill and James Smith-Williams have the experience of playing multiple seasons in the defense. But that's going to be the trend now. I think 10 to 11, maybe some people even have 12 defensive linemen, because that's kind of how the game's going. You got to get after the ball. You got to attack, pull this guy out, put the next guy in. I think that's how the league is trending. And you're going to see less and less linebackers because most people don't play a base 4-3 anymore. It's very rare.
Additionally, I think the sheer number of D linemen is going to help if they execute it properly. We know they got two of the most expensive D tackles in the league, so it's going to be hard and two of the most effective and expensive. So it's hard to take those two off the field at any given point in time. So it's going to be interesting to see if that plan is a solid one going forward because of what we've seen in terms of depth with injuries over the past few years. So I see where they're going with that one. Should the team, I know this was yours, Glenn, but should the team consider adding any player who has been cut from another team? If so, who?
I would look for lineman help, offensive lineman. I think that would be the one position that would worry me the most. Would be offensive lineman.
Interior or out on the tackles?
I worry for Wiley. Wiley would be the one I would really worry about. And if Lucas comes in, now you're really shaky at beyond that. So if there's a decent tackle that comes available, I think they should go after that. If I know there's going to be a tackle or two that pops up. Inside, they should be okay. Between the depth they have on the inside with Charles and Paul. And I do expect them to sign Tyler Lawson back. just as a practice squad guy. He can step in case at center. Cosme there. So I think inside they're good. Tackles where I'm worried. And I didn't even mention Leno, he's getting older every year. And, it takes one little nick and then you're really, really short at tackle. And I think Cosme and Charles are pretty much married to the inside. They're only going to go outside at tackle if it's just an emergency situation. So I think that would be the one place I would expect them to find a person, find another body or two. Would definitely be tight. It would be offensive line.
Glenn, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, but I was thinking, offensive line is one, but I was also thinking linebacker. I think linebacker is one that they may end up needing before it's all said and done. You like Jamin Davis, but again, we don't know what Jamin Davis is going to show up this year, right? We know he made some grounds last year. He improved. But can this be the year that Jamin Davis this has to be the year for Jamin Davis to flip the switch. I'm putting that pressure on him. It has to be this year. You got Cody Barton. That's Barton that's still there. That's playing. I think they kept the David Mayo. He's up and downish, right? What you get from them. So I think if they could go out there and get a linebacker, then a linebacker would not be a bad move for this team to go get a linebacker. To have a couple linebackers, 2 or 3 linebackers in the wing that they can pull up from another team to come and work with this group here. Because they have the interior alignment. Now they need the linebacker that can fit with that can cover. Because I just think about some of the running games that the teams they got to play. They got to play Philadelphia Eagles twice, right? The teams who like to run and pound the football. And then their goal is the linebackers going to step up. Then you got to have linebackers who need to cover, right? When you play some of the other teams that's on their roster as well. And we know last year Jamin had a problem with covering. So those are the things that I'm looking for, that this team should be able to get some linebackers who are able to cover and come downhill and take on the run for the teams that's playing. They're going to play on their roster, on their schedule.
I'd have to say that I agree with you, Glenn. That's the first position I thought of was the linebacker core. Knowing that Jamin is on basically a prove-it year, being a first rounder, they got to decide on his option or so soon, I'm pretty sure. I know this year is going to be big in that decision, a big factor in that decision, especially with the new ownership group and everything in place. So I see it the same way you guys both see it. For me, linebacker was first. Second, it was going to be offensive line. But Felix has some great points about the league shifting over to having fresh bodies on the D line and why the devaluation of the linebacker position, especially with the increase of secondary players that are being lined up on the field with all the formations being spread out. I think this offense that the Commanders are going to run is going to be a good example of what they're going to see on a week-to-week basis. So I see the emphasis on the D line and the defensive backs, especially with the 2 draft picks this year coming in the defensive secondary, and wanting to keep that in place with the 2 safeties that are already showing some promise, and of course St. Juice and Fuller. I think it was a good thing to keep the sheer number of DBs that they have and the D linemen to go with it, so they got some versatility in their offenses. Glenn, I guess go ahead.
Yeah, you talk about secondary. I want to point out the secondary. I want to ask Phyllis a question about the secondary. With this secondary, how good could this secondary be? We know how good the front four is, right? You've been at training camp. You've seen these guys play. You've seen Emmanuel Forbes. You've seen the Danny Johnsons, the Christian Holmes, and all those guys. How good can this secondary be? And will any one of these guys knock Kendall Fuller down before the year's out?
They've been praying on Kendall's downfall for a minute now.
They have. And first of all, Emmanuel Forbes is going to go for the ball. And we're going to see there's the trade-off. You're going to go for the ball. He's going to lose some battles. But if he can turn the ball over, that trades that off. So if you see what Cowboys have in Diggs, they'll take those times he gets burned because he's going to make the play on the ball. So I think that's going to be great. Martin's going to step up. Danny Johnson is your do-all every backup. In a moment, he can go out there and he's going to perform. I said this before, I'm more on St. Juice, and I think it's incumbent on him to kind of step up and take Kendall Fuller's spot because Emmanuel Forbes has got his spot. So it's on St. Juice to take Kendall's spot. And Kendall is the more reliable player because he doesn't get the flags. He's not as grabby as St. Juice, so he doesn't get the penalties. So I think that's who pushes Fuller. But this defense, the secondary, has amazing potential. We saw Derek Forrest. You're going to see a new level of Defoe. Defoe is now comfortable. He knows that's his position. He is ready to go. He's not that third safety anymore. Percy Butler is not a third safety. And not a lot of people have spoken about him, but Percy Butler also runs a 4-3-5. So they've had, now the three safeties are Curl, Forrest, and Butler. So now you have speed. And that's something that we didn't have when we had McCain back there. So now we can really, truly be versatile in what they want to do. So now if someone lines up over a safety, now it's Percy Butler. Now he's going to cover you. Curl's covering that tight end. Defoe's covering the back door. So now Forbes can be aggressive because Forrest is going to be back there. So it's incumbent, to answer your question, Glenn, it's on St. Juice to take Kendall's job. It's not on anybody else. Or if they're not careful, Martin will take both their jobs.
Felix, is there anything to what we've seen in camp with St. Juice being in the slot? No, even though we know he's better suited for the outside, and we seen Kendall get burnt versus in the dual practices versus Odell and company, and just is there anything to that, or is that just trying to work out some widgets? I'll
say this: stop overreacting to one-on-ones, people. One-on-ones in practice are 97% offense and 3% defense. The defenders in La La Land, and this even goes back to the video years ago, Glenn. Remember we were back in Richmond?
Yeah.
When Terry McLaurin was a rookie, I had the video of him burning Josh Norman, and it blew up. No one ever heard of Terry McLaurin to that video. But Kendall doesn't do good against those type of receivers. He doesn't do good against fast, quick receivers. That's not his matchup. All right? That is more of a Forbes matchup. Kendall, St. Juice was not the starting in the starting lineup, but he would come in, and it kind of was fluid. Sometimes Forbes went inside. Sometimes Kendall went inside. Sometimes they stayed outside, and one became kind of a safety. And Curl went down. So there's a lot of different variations of that, but they're not going to just put St. Juice in the slot. We saw that tried, and we saw that fail because he's not quick enough to get out of his brace. So he has to be on the outside. So if it comes down to it, Forbes would move more inside because he's quicker. But St. Juice was not really lined up in the slot. Every blue moon it would happen, but no, it was more Forbes sliding in and St. Juice staying outside because St. Juice doesn't have the hips or the twitch to play inside.
We all know the secondary and especially safety goes as Cam Curl goes, and you have a healthy Cam Curl that is coming back and is playing, and we see the difference that Cam Curl makes in this secondary altogether. And I think with the addition of Percy Butler, we saw him get a pick in the preseason this year. These guys are ball hawks, and they're looking for more turnovers from this defense secondary. We know they got off to a slow start last year. The start of the secondary was real slow, and they picked up as the year go along. Should be a faster start this year, and this defense should, in the secondary and the front four, should be able to match each other this year and go forth. Just your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said Cam Curl is the most important player on the defense. If you remember those first two games, Cam Curl didn't play. He was hurt. Defense didn't look good. He comes in, the defense goes on a roll. He gets hurt in the San Francisco 49er game. We remember what happened in that 49er game. So he is that cog to that defense. He puts everybody in their correct positions, and his versatility. And now it doesn't always show up in stats, but he's covering the tight end. He's playing downhill as a linebacker. He's doing so many of the small things that let everybody else shine. So with him being here week one and Chase being there on week one, them playing I don't know what the Cardinals are doing. I think they went to NBA tanking for what they're doing over there. I'm glad they almost need to do what the Wizards need to do, but that's going to lend itself to a great week one because you're going to have someone that's coming into an offense brand new, so they can go for broke. But Cam Curl was the defining factor of that defense. If you go back and look at those stats, when he missed games, the defense did not play well. The Lions game, the Lions went up and down the field. Curl wasn't out there. And so that matters a lot to the team. So I don't think they start slow this year, just because they're going to come out there with all of their horses on defense. Every single person that's supposed to start will be there.
Got you. Got a couple questions from online. I'm going to hit some of these up. And the first one is, we can go with Paul Wilson from Facebook. And Paul actually, he wants to explain why 7 DNs. Understand the interior alignment, but why 7 DNs?
So one of them won't dress. So you can go to 6. 2 of them are pretty much special teamers. So you're going to have your core rotation. You're going to have Sweat, Young, Smith Williams will be a 3rd. Then it's a battle for KJ and the other guy for who's that 4th DN. Then the other 2 will be special teams. It's just playing the law of averages. You're trying to throw as many bodies that you can at the position because it's just so vital. So some will have other purposes, like a KJ, and then will be more of a rush just specialist. James Smith-Williams, Casey Tuhill more if you're in a run situation, you're playing like maybe the Giants or somebody who's more of a power run team, and you need DNs who can hold up against the run. You'll see more of them in those type games. So the backups will kind of depend on the type of team that they're playing. So if they're playing a wide open team, you're going to see more KJ and Andre. If you see more of a running team, you'll see more James Smith-Williams and Casey Tuhill as your backup DNs.
And another question I got for you here, come from our buddy George, and we haven't touched on this yet, but I want your clear thoughts on this is, and it goes, and what you hear about Ron Rivera. We all know the story from Ron Rivera and Sam Howell. He didn't want to play Sam Howell. The clarification it does not make Ron Rivera look good, right? At all. And then you on top of this, when I first heard the story and read the story, the first thing I heard about was I thought about the Cleveland Brown game when he didn't know that the Commanders needed to win in order to get in the playoffs. Right. Is he really this kind of, I don't want to say clueless, but not up to what's going on in the organization?
I think we always say that we want people to be upfront and truthful. I think he's too truthful. And I think that dawns out because he makes him look like he doesn't know what he's talking about. Now, I'm going to caveat this. It was very bad what he said. He shouldn't have said it. Like, that makes no sense. However, Sam Howell did not look anywhere like this last year at all. So before people start, he did not look.
Hey, Wole would disagree with you. If Wole was here, he would disagree with you.
But the part of that was he was in Scott Turner's offense and was not geared for any success. So there's a lot that goes to that story. Yeah, Sam didn't look as good as he does this year. Yeah, it's a different offensive coordinator. An offense geared to him, not geared to a Carson Wentz or a Taylor Heineke. That offense was geared for those guys. And he was getting 3rd rep snaps with 3rd rep talent. Now, Sam Howell's had a full offseason getting every first team snap. Jacoby Brissett did not get one first team snap all through OTAs or training camp. It was all his. And an offense with an offensive mind and Eric Bieniemy, he looks 1,000 times better than he did last year. We were shocked when he missed throws in training camp. That's how it was to us watching. But Coach Rivera should not have come out and said that. He should have said, we knew he had potential, and the potential has now come to the forefront. No one would have had a problem with that. Now it seems like Sam was throwing touchdowns behind his back all last season, and he was just sitting there as the 3rd string quarterback when that wasn't the case. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that goes into that statement, but Ron needs to have a better mental acuity of what's going on with his team and just say, hey, he wasn't ready last year. And there's nothing wrong with him not being ready last year. Quarterbacks can sit for a year or two. I know we see the Joe Burrows and we see the Justin Herberts, but look at Aaron Rodgers. He sat for 3 years. It didn't hurt. It never hurt him. So we need to understand everyone has their own path to success. So if Sam Howell sits a year and then he comes out and throws for 3,500 yards and we win 11 games, who cares what he did the year before? Because now you've set yourself up for the future. But Coach Rivera he puts his shoe in his mouth because he's too honest. He's very, very honest. And we like honesty, but then there's a certain point where you shouldn't say it. Like the whole Eric Bieniemy thing a couple of weeks ago. You just shouldn't have said it. And I don't think he filters himself. So he says something and it's like, I probably shouldn't have said that, but I'm like 2 feet in, so I'm just going to keep going. Like I'm just going to get with it at this point.
We got Felix with the vocabulary word of the day with acuity.
That means I need sleep. I'm saying words like that.
Glenn, anything you want to add?
Yeah, Mo, your thoughts on Ron Rivera, then I got one more thing, and we up out of here.
I mean, I think Felix hit the nail on the head. I think Ron is old-fashioned. Ron reminds me of that old uncle at the cookout. He just says anything out of his mouth. You know what I mean? He just says what he feels in the moment, and he lives with it. I mean, you know, being a former military and all that, I think that's embedded in him. I don't know. He knows how to. He doesn't have a filter. You know what I mean? He doesn't have a filter. He everything's on the cuff. He wears his emotions on his sleeves, and that's how he carries himself. And I think, you know, that resonates with some people, and it's probably not the best media training, but you know, I think that's what has gotten him where he's at so far. And I think, you know, the respect that he does have, I think that's why he has it. But we know when you're a part of an organization like this, that's had some turmoil, that's had a lot of turnover, and that's coming off of seasons that they feel that they should have been a little bit more successful. I still date it back to that one playoff appearance that shouldn't have happened, that caused a lot of this expectation, because this team was not a playoff team in that season. That wasn't, you know, the season where everybody else wasn't great and they made the playoffs. I still think it dates back to that, but like it just constantly seems like he's putting like you said, a shoe in his own mouth. You know what I mean? At times, so like he needs to. I guess they got a new communications team, don't it? Get this guy some media training and let Ron keep going. But Ron's gonna be Ron, so I don't look any further into that than need to be.
Yeah, especially when you miss the playoffs. I think that's the biggest thing. When he said it and the team had the opportunity to make the playoffs, and then Sam Howell had a game that he had with the Cowboys team, everybody was thinking like, dang, if you would have played him the week earlier when everybody wanted you to play him, or 2 weeks earlier when everybody wanted you to play him, you might have won the Browns game and got into the playoffs and had a playoff game and not ended the way that you ended, you know, with the record. I think everybody's, like you said, hindsight's 2020. I think that's what everybody was thinking about when that comment came out. Like, dang, if you knew it, why didn't you play? But Phyllis, I think you brought a good point up. It was Scott Turner's offense, and it wasn't the offense that he's currently in right now. Last thing I got before we turn over to Mo is this. We're gonna look at the roster one more time, and I want to know which on this roster, who do you think are Pro Bowl players this year?
Pro Bowlers. I would go with Cameron Curl.
Hot take.
Terry McLaurin and Deron Payne.
Okay.
I think those would be Pro Bowlers. I think Chase is going to be knocking at the door. And I wouldn't be shocked out of Dotson, because I'll tell you this. In speaking with EB, with Coach Bieniemy, he loves Dotson. And he told us off the cuff, he's like, there's something in him, and I can't wait to get out. So he has plans for Jahan Dotson. So those would be my ones. I think Curl's going to finally get the respect playing around a much better secondary. It's going to showcase him better. I think Terry's going to be Terry. He's finally getting the respect around the league. And I think Deron Payne's going to get the respect around the league as well. So that would be mine. Those would be mine. I could see Chase making it. I could see Allen making it, of course. Those are the guys who would stand out to me as being Pro Bowlers. Also, Sam Cosmi has an outside shot too.
All right. Mo, who do you think? Look at the list.
I'm going with Big John Allen. I'm going with Big John Allen. I'm going with Terry McLaurin. If we're talking about just outright before all the people, you know, opt out or whatever, Terry comes back, because hopefully Terry comes back and the toe is not an issue, and he can reclaim his form and get to new heights. I really do think that I was really looking forward to a statistical increase for Terry, because I feel like he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. I think we're talking about a top 10 to 12 receiver in the league that kind of like gets overlooked. But it's time for him to get his perennial respect. And we know what John Allen does. It seems to be with the two interior guys, they take turns of who's gonna be more dominant per year. So if I'm looking at the trend, it's looking like it's John Allen's year to be the double sack guy alongside Payne and get another Pro Bowl nod.
Yeah. If I had to look at it, I would say Jahan Dotson. I think Dotson, this is the year for Dotson to get over. I think we talked about it on the show, and I talked about it. I think Jahan Dotson is a little bit better than Terry McLaurin. I know there's a lot of debate that's out there. And people talk about that. I'll be that guy. You can add me at Real Glenn Thomas. You can add me at Real Glenn Thomas. I think he is a little bit better than Terry McLaurin. But I think Jahan it's his season. I also like Jonathan Allen. And we haven't talked about much on the show. I think this year, actually, I'm going to go on a long pull. I think Cole Turner actually gets a Pro Bowl appearance as a tight end this year, just based off what Eric Bieniemy has done in Kansas City with.
I will say this: Cole Turner is going to end up being tight end one. You're all going to see what I saw at him at a camp at him last year. He's a receiver, and he uses a third tight end inline blocker. That's not him. You're going to see him featured, and he can catch the ball. So look out for Cole Turner. Now I ain't gonna go as far as saying Pro Bowl, but I will say he's going to be the starting tight end, and he's going to be that tight end on receiving downs. It's going to be him because he can make plays. And when you have Dotson and McLaurin and Samuels and Curtis, now your fifth guy is on Cole Turner.
Yeah.
So he's gonna have the matchup, and at 6'5", 6'6", he's gonna win the matchup. If anything, we have the biggest tight ends in the league by far.
Glenn, boy, that was a hot take, Glenn. I need some more airtime.
You certified on that one,
Glenn. Glenn,
I know what Glenn's going with, but yeah, that's
Glenn. Responsibility matters. Jahan can do all of that because 17 is taking coverage on the other side. Don't forget that.
We'll see when 17 is not there. When we saw in the preseason when 17 was not there, Jahan was still making plays.
Let's not put too much stock into the Arizona Cardinals. The following week will be the true test if Terry doesn't play to see if Jahan Dotson can take on that number one role. Because like we talked about, Arizona is clearly trying to get the top 2 picks in the draft. Yeah, and I would too if I can get Caleb Montgomery and Marvin Harrison Jr. But Jahan Dotson, we're gonna talk about this one, Glenn.
He done started something.
You're gonna have some rumblings in Commanders country, man.
Hey, it's all right. I'll take it on.
Anyway, man, Felix, man, tell the people how they can catch you on social media and how they can catch your content.
Yeah, man, you can read all my work at 1340amfoxsports.com. All my articles. You can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it, at bcommander2407, and on IG at Blessed Commander. Follow me, ask me questions. I like to look for the things that those other people don't look for, and just be real. And there's no politics in my game. I'm just calling it like I see it. So, give me a follow. Love to interact, love to chat. It's much love to everybody out there.
Man, it's been a great show, man. You guys make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. Just search All Burgundy and Gold, Errrything. Also, tweet us at ABG_Errrything and hit us up on IG at ABG_Errrything. And like our All Burgundy and Gold Errrything Facebook page. Make sure you guys also subscribe to our All Burgundy and Gold Errrything YouTube channel as well. Thank you guys for listening to All Burgundy and Gold Errrything. Felix, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, good night, fellas. Talk to you later.
Good night, everyone.